Welcome back, students. Your Menopause Tailor is here to bring you yet another tutorial on a menopause-related matter. Can you believe that this is tutorial 109? You are getting so much information on all the things that will affect your menopause and the rest of your life. One of the most significant things that will affect every aspect of your life is your diet. And this video addresses a very important part of your diet: protein. Instead of referring you to the outline notes in my menopause book, I'm going to show you the sources of information that I'll be giving you today. You know, I don't just get in front of the camera and tell you what to do for your menopause or tell you what I do for my menopause. This series is much more objective than that. I do a bunch of research on everything I teach you, and I narrow it down so that you get the big picture. But I like to show you the sources of my information just in case you want to do further research on your own. So here is the source of the information I'll be giving you today. This is a book called The China Study. This book by T. Colin Campbell is about animal protein versus plant protein. And I'll tell you how this book came about. Dr. Campbell grew up on an American farm, and his family raised cattle. And of course, they also ate the typical meat and dairy-based diet that is characteristic of farmers. And like most cattle farmers, he and his family believed that animal protein was superior to plant protein. But he grew up to become a scientist who studied protein. And everything he thought he knew about animal versus plant protein was turned completely upside down. As you can see, I have read this book, highlighted it, tabbed it, studied it, compared it with other books on the subject. I mean, you name it, I've done it, because that's how I research for you. And since my menopause education gives you options in every category, diet is a very important one in managing your menopause your way. And it turns out that protein is a very important part of managing your menopause through diet. So today, we'll talk about the differences between animal protein and plant protein. You should definitely watch this video because I'll bet anything that you, just like the author of the China Study, will discover that everything you thought you knew about protein is upside down. I'll tell you from the start that I am vegan. I've been vegan my entire adult life. And you know, whenever I tell someone I'm vegan, the very first thing they ask is, where do you get your protein? And when they ask me that, I cock my head and I say, you eat a cow for its protein, right? And inevitably they go, uh-huh. And I say, well, what does the cow eat? And that causes them to furrow their brow and kind of scrunch their nose up a bit. So then I continue with, the cow eats nothing but grass all day. But you're killing the cow for its protein. So where did the cow get all that protein? And that sets the stage for further discussion. They always say they never thought about it before. So all of your previous assumptions that plants don't have protein are wrong. Thus, my t-shirt. You know, I am not a t-shirt type of girl. I got this t-shirt just for you for this video. So if you're watching this video, you probably live in a land of affluence. All first world countries are lands of affluence. And all lands of affluence are affluent enough to include meat and dairy products in their diets. And because meat and dairy are more expensive than plants, we tend to magnify their benefits. So I'll bet you recall a food pyramid from way back when you were a little tiny thing that had only 4 food groups: dairy products, meat, fruits and vegetables, and grains. It's undergone a few updates over time, so these are all food pyramids here. And now it's a food plate. It has 4 sections and a side of dairy. So this food pyramid or plate idea has really transformed over time. But none of these food pyramids or food plates actually designate your protein as the main dish. But I'll also bet that you've always considered your meat the main dish. Come on, when you were a kid and you asked, "Hey Mom, what's for dinner?" I'm gonna bet your mom answered with meatloaf, or chicken, or pork chops. I'll bet she didn't say tofu, or salad, or couscous. We live in lands of affluence, and we in the lands of affluence have always emphasized the meat and dairy in our diet. And what about dairy? How much focus do we place on dairy products? Let's see. There's milk, cream, ice cream, sour cream, cheese, butter, yogurt. Dairy products are everywhere. There's dairy in foods you never even considered in the dairy category. This whole dairy consumption behavior kind of baffles me. Name one other animal that continues to consume dairy after it's weaned from breastfeeding. There isn't one. Humans are the only animals on Earth that don't stop ingesting dairy with weaning. How about this? Name one other animal that routinely ingests the dairy product of a different animal. There isn't one. We humans are the only ones. We humans do the oddest things, and yet 85% of adults have difficulty digesting dairy. That's why there are all those lactate products for the lactose intolerant. You're supposed to become lactose intolerant. Mother Nature intended for you to lose the enzymes to digest dairy as soon as you could eat solid food. Have you ever thought about it that way? It kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Everything you've ever heard about dairy products being your best source of anything is untrue. Not calcium, not protein, nada. But the dairy industry doesn't want you to know that. So this food pyramid has changed over the years, but it's been very slow. And the reason it's been slow is because of resistance from the meat and dairy industries. So now we have the regular food pyramid, the vegetarian food pyramid, and the vegan food pyramids. But these vegan and vegetarian food pyramids are considered to be alternative. All of these things have given you a distorted perception of the value of animal protein. Most people view it as superior to plant protein. And so did T. Colin Campbell, PhD, until he studied it as a scientist and wrote the China study. So let me share with you the truth about the differences between animal protein and plant protein. The word protein comes from the Greek word proteos, which means of prime importance. And in the 19th century, the word protein was synonymous with meat. That conception remained for over 100 years. And now most people still think of meat as the best source of protein, with dairy products in second place. But what if I told you that's all wrong? What if I told you that not only do plants contain protein, they contain a higher quality of protein? Plant protein is superior to animal protein. What if I told you that we could prevent almost all all heart attacks and all cancers if we simply gave up all animal products. Would you believe me? It's true. What's also true is that you probably don't want to hear the truth about this because you love your meat and dairy. And the meat and dairy industries don't want you to know the truth either. In fact, most people love meat and dairy products so much that they'd rather eat them and take their chances on heart attacks and cancers than omit them and essentially erase that risk. But here's what T. Colin Campbell discovered in his research on animal versus plant protein. In very poor rural parts of China, where they are much too poor to have any animal or dairy protein, they've never even heard of a heart attack, and they've never had any kind of cancer. Oh, and guess what? Their blood cholesterol is only about 89. Here in the land of affluence, we consider the value of cholesterol normal up to 200. It's not normal. We have just adjusted our upper limit of normal for our addiction to meat and protein products because they all raise our cholesterol. So we've made our labs coincide with our addiction to meat and dairy. So let me give you some of the details about the differences in our diet of affluence and rural China's diet of all plants. T. Colin Campbell studied the US and compared it to China. So these statistics are North America. If you live in a different land of affluence, your statistics are probably pretty similar. In the United States, 15 to 16% of total calories come from protein, 80% of which is animal-based. But in rural China, only 9 to 10% of total calories come from protein, and only 10% of it is animal-based. Here's a chart showing these differences in protein. This is just protein. What you see here is that in China, they eat more calories per day, but the calories consist of a much higher percentage of plant proteins that constitute fewer protein calories overall. And if you compare the percentage of calories from animal protein, it's 10 to 11% in the United States and only 0.8% in China. And if you compare the percentage of calories from plant protein, it's 20% in the US and 90% in China. And if you compare the percentage of total protein that is animal protein, it's 80% in the US and 10% in China. And finally, if you compare the percentage of total protein that is plant protein, it's 20% in the US and 90% in China. But those are not the only differences. Because of this huge difference in the intakes of animal products, a bunch of other things are different too. Look at this chart. This chart demonstrates that fat intake is massively higher in the US, while fiber and iron intake are much higher in China. So how does this translate into your risk for diseases? Do you remember all those tutorials I've given you about preventing the diseases associated with menopause? Well, what about the diseases associated with your diet? Have you ever thought about how many diseases you can prevent through your diet? As we progress through this series, I'll give you all sorts of tips on specific foods for preventing specific symptoms and diseases associated with menopause. But this particular tutorial is about animal protein versus plant protein. So what diseases can you prevent by eating only plants and no animals? Would it shock you if I told you that you can prevent the vast majority of diseases simply by eating nothing but plants? It's true. Here's a chart comparing the diseases of affluent countries with those of poor countries. What you see is that in the United States, people die of heart attack, cancer, and diabetes, all of which are caused by animal protein and animal fat. What this means is that in affluent countries, death is due to diseases related to our diets, especially animal products. Heart attacks, cancers, and diabetes are almost 100% due to diet, an animal-based diet. Please don't hate me for being the bearer of bad news. Here's the chart again. Look at the poorer countries. In poor countries, death is due to poor sanitation and infection, but it's not due to their diet. So the truth is that a plant-based diet can prevent a bunch of the things you wish to avoid. And everything you've always thought about animal protein being superior to plant protein is just plain wrong. Now you know that this education is all about managing your menopause your way. Sometimes I'm going to teach you about an option that you don't want to use. I taught you about estrogen replacement, and you may have rejected that. That's fine. You just need to know how to compensate in other ways. Today I taught you about plant protein. You may reject that. That's fine. You just need to know all the advantages and disadvantages of all your options. I'm going to tell you the truth about everything, and you can use the information as you please. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm teaching you how to use information to do what you want to do. I respect whatever you choose to do to manage your menopause, and I'll help you regardless of your choices. But I want you to have a full fund of knowledge with which to make your choices. So that's it for today. Plants have protein. Go pick your protein, and I'll see you in a week. In the meantime, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you then.